Fuck me, eh?
Australian troops exchange heavy fire with the Taliban in the southern province of Uruzgan in May. With the insurgents closing in and threatening to entrap them, the soldiers call in an airstrike.
Red Force, over.
Here it comes. We didn't get dressed up for nothing. There we go. Boy, bring it in. Start fucking.
Let's go, guys.
The A&A. Put that fucking shit away, Ross. Let's go.
It's not publicly known if anyone, Taliban or civilian, was killed or injured in this bombing. But as the number of Afghan civilians killed in the fight to eradicate the Taliban rises, questions are increasingly being raised over missions like this.
Of course, we know in a war, you cannot completely avoid a civilian casualty, but making it so frequent causes the people to turn against us. It turns the population against us, and also brings the goodwill of the Afghan people really down.
There are currently more than 60,000 foreign soldiers stationed in Afghanistan, and the UN estimates that last year they were responsible for the deaths of more than 800 civilians.
Because the people of Afghanistan see the international forces as their friends, as people who have come to help them. And when they themselves become the targets, the civilians, then they ask the question, are we friends or not?
This is just a small token. It's a new turban, new headdress for him.
It's not easy to spot who are your friends in a place like Uruzgan.
Get him behind you.
10 Australian soldiers have already lost their lives serving here. The Taliban have been waging a fierce insurgency amongst a civilian population.
Yeah, what, in green robes?
Yeah, I just stood up and then sat down.
Okay, from here, just grab your camera, I'll take a photo.
And the line between friend and foe is frequently blurred.
Counterinsurgency operations carry risk, and tragically, despite the best training, preparation and leadership, civilian casualties can occur.
In September 2008, Australian soldiers opened fire and killed Rosie Khan. An important tribal leader and former police chief, he was a fierce opponent of the Taliban. Rosie Khan was just one of the Afghan civilians mistakenly killed by Australian troops. Others include a 6-month-old baby, a teenage girl, 5 children, and 2 suspected suicide bombers, later found to be unarmed. For the brother of one young man speaking to the Australian media for the first time, there is no excuse for such errors. 24-year-old father of 4, Raz Mohammed, was shot dead by Australian troops in the Tarankot market on the 24th of July 2007. They thought he was a suicide bomber and said he failed to stop when ordered, but he was found not to have any weapons on him. It's difficult to find out information about civilians who may have been killed in actions involving Australian forces. For example, the Defence Department released this statement in May, saying it will review the circumstances surrounding the deaths of 4 men in a firefight. Dateline has learnt that a woman also died of her injuries. But there's no mention of her in the press statement, and the media wasn't told about her death. Brigadier Rick Burr is the Director General of Military Strategic Commitments in Canberra.
It was inconclusive that we may have caused that casualty. Indeed, it is most likely that this particular casualty was caused by the Taliban.
But was it ruled out that it wasn't caused by Australians? 100% ruled out, or?
I can't answer that question.
How many other cases like this have not been reported?
Well, we can only act on information that is reported. If we don't know that there is
reported to the public, you knew about it.
If it is reported to us, then it will be reported to the public.
But
absolutely.
This wasn't.
This particular issue.
This death wasn't reported.
I can't comment on what exactly happened at that time.
The rising civilian death toll is causing such concern that 3 weeks ago the UN Special Representative to Afghanistan, Eide, asked NATO defence ministers to urgently review all special forces operations in the country, telling them the political costs are simply disproportionate to the military gains.
I think Kai Eide has been one of many people who've said things like that over the last year or two, and in fact President Karzai has been making very similar points for about 3 years now, that while you may win a tactical victory by killing Taliban, if you also kill or injure civilians and alienate the population in a given area, that can be seen as a strategic defeat.
I'm on my way to meet a man who may well be Australia's fiercest critic in Afghanistan. His name is Haji Abdul Halik.
استرالیان په روزګان کې هیڅ محبوبیت نه لري. استرالیانو څخه د خلکو ډیر نفرت کیږي.
He is one of 3 members from Uruzgan to be elected to Afghanistan's national parliament, and definitely no friend of the Taliban. Haji Abdul Halik makes extraordinary allegations against Australian soldiers.
زما د پایمل ازا زما مېرمن زما زامن زما لونې زما نور قربانې په سره غرمه باندې استرالیانو په موټر کې وشتلي دي پیر کړي دي شهیدان کړي دي.
On the 5th of July 2006, Halik's relative's car was fired upon as they returned to the town of Tarankot. His brother-in-law was killed, his wife blinded, and Halik's daughter lost her leg.
شهیدان کړي دي ټپیان کړي دي بیا ورته راغلي دي ښځې ټپیانې پرتې دي شهیدان پراته دي کشنیان نجونې پراته دي ټپیان یو بوتل اوبه یې قسم په خدا کې ورکړي دي پر دغه ځای کې باندې پرېښي دي.
In the fog of war, it's often extremely difficult to establish the facts. But Haji Halik is adamant it was Australians who shot up his family.
پر غونډې باندې چې دوی ولاړ وو د ټانکونه ورسره وو دوی ولاړ وو هلته هغه ترجمانان چې ورسره وو ترجمانان خلکو پېژندلي وو بیا دوی خپله ویلي وو بیا نو والي پېژندلي وو کومندان پېژندلي کومندان والي چې پوښتنه وکړه تحقیق وکړي چې دا برکایانو که استرالیانو په هغو شپې کې هلنډیان لا نه وو راغلي بیا د هغو د معلوماتو په اساس باندې چې دا استرالیانو.
His claims have been assessed by the ADF, who reject his allegations.
The assessment found that there is no evidence nor any suggestion or indication that such evidence may exist to support media reporting that Australian Special Forces were involved in the incident.
But the Age newspaper claims there was a cover-up of the attack. Nick McKenzie is the paper's special investigations reporter.
What the Age reported was that there was information collected on the ground in Afghanistan by Australian Defence officials. This information included things like putting the SAS soldiers in the vicinity of the area where the family was shot. That there was contact, there was exchanges of fire between, reported exchanges of fire between insurgents and Australian Defence personnel at around the time this incident happened.
The Chief of the Defence Force, Air Chief Marshal Houston, has said that a further assessment found that there is no evidence to support the Age's story. I mean, do you stand by your story?
We do stand by our story, and I think it's incumbent on the Defence Force to, if they've done a secondary inquiry, well, release it and show the public what they've done in terms of that secondary inquiry. Have they spoken to everybody on the ground at the time of the incident? Have they reviewed all the information that's held informally and formally in Defence Department computers in Afghanistan and Canberra? If they've done that, fine, but release it. Why can't they? The incident happened in 2006. Why can't they release that information and show us, show the media and the public that indeed it has been a very thorough investigation?
Dateline asked Defence for a full copy of the second inquiry, but they declined our request.
Assalamu alaikum.
While I'm in Afghanistan, my local producer Ali gets a call from a reporter based in Tarin Kot, the capital of Uruzgan province. It's a claim of more civilian casualties. He says a helicopter has fired on 2 cars in the Mirabad region of the province. We are told that earlier that day, Australian troops had been seen operating about 5 kilometres away from where the cars were fired upon.
دازي په طالبانو کړی وی که اول دازي طالبانو ترمنځ تبادله شوی چې بیا په دوی باندې فایرونه وکړل.
بله اول دازي پر خارجان او حکومت کې اکثر به هغه چې سره لري او خیل لري او هغه شخصي امنیتي خلک هغه ځای کې نه و نه په خبرو.
We asked the reporter in Tarin Kot to go to the local hospital and interview the people there who claim to be victims of the attack.
مرد چناتو د ولسوالۍ تیری و ولایت راغلی و په دلین په مټران کې د دې خاصه ماپشن ووتلو اجزا را سره وي دلین مټران و چوراله د کوچکیلو منطقه ته برای عدالت دوی څرخک تیاری را لې بمبار وکړي د ماشان د منځ بعد.
مجمن په دغه پیښه کې څومره کسان زخمیان شوي او شهیدان شوي دي تاسو معلومات باندې لرئ؟
په دغه پیښه کې 8 کسه شهیدان شوي دي د ماشومانو د جزو سره او 3 کسه مرل ته ټپیانه وړي دي یو د نقش د درو میاشت د عموم ټپیرا وړي دي چې د جاجزه سره ورسره.
The doctor at Tarin Kot Hospital backs up these people's claims.
د دوړو مټرانو کې تقریبا 9 کسان شهیدان شوي او شپاخانې ته 4 ټپیان راوړي.
بله تاسو باندې څرنګه د بمبارۍ وسول تاسو چیرې تلاست؟
تلو کورته
تاسو
بازار ته په دوات.
بله ستاسو سره عاجزې وې کشنیان در سره وه؟
نو کشنیان را سره وه خپل میانه خو د موږ خلک را سره وه رای اوس بیرته دیوله.
بله تاسو ته معلومیږي چې دا کوم ډله ده یعنې امریکایان دي استرالیان دي ایرلنډیان دي څوک دي؟
دا پته هېڅ چاته نه معلومیږي چې څرخک تیاري راغلې بمبار یې وکړي د ماښام د لمانځه بعد دواړه مټران یې وویشته مټرانو ور واخیستل انسانان پکښې وسوله ججې پکښې وسولې ماشومان پکښې وسوله نور یې په زور د مټرانو سره کش کړل د انسانان چې ژوندي پکښې پاته وه د ټپیان.
The Australian military confirms they ordered an airstrike on 2 vehicles at the same place and time as the people in the hospital claim.
Through intelligence and aerial surveillance, we know that both of those vehicles were destroyed and there were no survivors.
No survivors? So what about these people in the hospital?
The insurgents, the Taliban, used propaganda and misinformation to often discredit the coalition forces operating in Afghanistan by accusations of civilian casualties. But in relation to the claim that you make, we have, and I couldn't speculate as to how they happened, but in relation to this particular incident, we're absolutely confident and confirmed through intelligence that there were no civilian casualties caused by coalition forces.
Well, it's not a claim that I make, it's a claim that these people in Tarin Kot Hospital make, and their description matches exactly what the department told me about the incident.
We can confirm through footage, surveillance footage, that there were no civilians in the vicinity of these 2 vehicles. The vehicles themselves were occupied by insurgents who have positively identified, and as we said, there were no survivors.
Will the department release that footage to prove that there were no civilians injured?
The department will not release that footage.
The department says they can't release the footage because of security reasons. And without viewing the vision, it's impossible to clarify exactly what happened and to explain these conflicting accounts. Dateline has also been seeking information from the department in relation to a story we broadcast 4 months ago. Local man Zahir Khan claimed that Australian troops killed his daughter, 4 other children and 2 adults in an unprovoked attack. The Defence Department confirms the deaths, but refuses to provide any other details, saying an inquiry is still underway.
I think that there are some legitimate questions to be asked in terms of the appropriateness of the Australian Defence Force conducting internally and keeping completely internal these types of investigations.
Legal expert Professor Donald Rothwell teaches military law to ADF lawyers at the Australian National University in Canberra.
So at the end of the day, it's really the Australian Defence Force, the Department of Defence, investigating itself. And that clearly that can't be appropriate for the purposes of pure independence in these types of matters.
It makes sense that you have both a military investigation, because you need to have that understanding of the military situation when an event takes place, but also it's important that you have somebody who's an external, impartial judge or ombudsman type figure to apply that degree of external advocacy or indeed external accountability to these kinds of things.
The lead force in Afghanistan, the US military, is also under scrutiny for the way they conduct their investigations into civilian deaths. This is the aftermath of a US bombing raid on the 4th of May in the western province of Farah.
از فامیل خود ما برادرزاده ما است برادر ما است دیگه مزد بچه کاکا ما است خوارزاده همین تو چیزای دیگه اینا همه کلا یک جا بود دیگه و همین رقم شهید شد دیگه ما صد از بین برفت دیگه 7 خونه بود از این 7 خونه رو دیگه خلاص کردیم 4 نفر زنده موند.
The US Army's investigation into the incident estimated that 26 civilians had been killed. But Neda Naderi, head of the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission, tells a very different story.
We found that around 97 people have lost their life. It was a terrible incident. We did found that at least 86 of these 97 people are women and children. We found 21 of them women. We found 31 girls under 18. We found 34 boys under 18.
Is the government disappointed that there is such a discrepancy between your numbers of civilians killed and the numbers that the Americans give?
Well, let's not make civilian casualty just a matter of numbers. One life lost is too many.
The American military concluded that nobody would be punished or reprimanded over this incident. And the Afghan government is now calling for an end to all airstrikes.
And the president is on the record asking for putting an end to airstrikes. Because you're acting on poor intelligence and it's up in the air, and the potential of civilians getting hurt is extremely high. So what you're asking, number one, is to bring the air rates down to zero.
Why does the Australian military continue to order airstrikes on targets after the president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, has called for an end to all airstrikes in his country?
When the circumstances dictate that there is no other viable option, airstrikes are used in accordance with very strict rules of engagement, in accordance with the commander of the international forces in Afghanistan's clear direction in terms of how air power is used, and as I said, in a very discretionary and last resort way.
Brigadier, I mean, He's the president of Afghanistan and he's asked for all airstrikes to end. I mean, doesn't that mean the Australian military has to stop doing this?
The Australian military worked to the commander of the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, who it's his prerogative to negotiate that with the president of Afghanistan.
There is now a new commander of the international forces in Afghanistan, American General Stanley McChrystal. After his appointment 3 weeks ago, McChrystal called for a culture shift in the way the war is being fought, saying more needs to be done to protect the lives of Afghan civilians.
If we gain that trust, we cannot lose. If we lose that trust, we cannot win.
The Australian Defence Force is already well advanced. We understand the situation in Afghanistan very, very well, and our forces are culturally attuned to the sensitivities of Afghanistan and are applying to very good effect.
Australia's cultural sensitivity doesn't wash with the Uruzgan MP Hajil. He wants Australian forces to fundamentally change their ways, or he says they should pack up and go home.
د ولس په نمائندګي باندې او ځان خپل په نمائندګي باندې چې اول هم خو د خپل کتاب خپل عسكر چې لري دي د اصلاح کې ودی توسعه وسات وکي دغه بد اعمال څخه دغه بد کارو څخه دغه مرد ولس مرغ د میرو د بیا بوي د توجون د کوتل شي څخه د منه کې جدن د منه کې کني د خپل عسكر د ولایت څخه وباشه روزګان څخه د وځي د افغانستان څخه د وځي موږ ساتنه د خدای څخه غواړو په دې باندې نه غواړو موږ خپل ځانونه په خدای باندې ساتو